Well, hey there, Lane. Thank you so much for being here today with me on the Confident Sober Women podcast. I am so excited to have you.
Mm.
And the topic is, obviously right in our wheelhouse and super relatable to all of us. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you share a little bit more about your story, and then we're going to chat.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Shelby. It's always just so great to speak about recovery. I live in long term recovery. I just celebrated 29 continuous years. And I don't say that as like, check me out. I say that as it's possible, you know? And for me, it wasn't about, um, I didn't come to this realization of like, oh my God, this is the end of my life. I'm getting sober. I came to this place of, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I was really kind of broken at the end of my drinking. And so when recovery appeared on my radar, I was like, oh my God, there's another way to live. Like, there's another way. There's another way. This is how people do it. Like, it kind of just floored me that there were other people who could go out and go to social events and go to dinner and not drink. Like, that wasn't a part of my vocabulary. So that was a really great experience. And I got sober in the 90s. So that is a whole thing right there. And I got sober in Los Angeles, which is a whole thing right there. So there's a lot of layers to my story. And it was a lot of fun. And that's what I wish for people is that, locking into a group of people or a community of people and just going for the ride. Because once you're involved, like it's so good. Um, and I wasn't, there's a lot of people that talk about they put down the drink and then they drank again. And that wasn't my experience. And I didn't know that I could just put down the drink and stay sober. Like I didn't know that that was possible. Like I just stayed sober every day. And not to say that relapse is not a part of life, but it's something now that I really look at and I really think about how, like, how am I doing this every day? What has been the magic or the secret, or um, what is that solution that I come back to every day? And what I've learned over the past couple of decades is that it's really it's spiritual for me. And I don't want that to sound woo woo, but it is like I have such a deep practice now and I rely on that practice to get me through really hard times. I've gone through life, like when I put down the drink, my life was a wreck. And I was told that I would never have a child. I was kind of washed out. And now I have a 16-year-old that we were just talking about. I never thought that I would get married. I'm married like for a long time. Like it's like these things, like I'm employable. I just like what, you know? So it's really, again, I go back to that spiritual component of like that is the thing that has been consistent throughout my recovery. Everything else has changed. Everything. My hair, my weight, um, who I've slept with, the friendships, everything, the work that I do, everything has changed. But that spiritual component is the thread that has kept me together in my recovery. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing all that. And it's so refreshing being in spaces and taking opportunities to talk about and even if we're not talking deeply about like some kind of drunk log or whatever, but just to remember, like go back, like while you're
Yeah.
talking, I'm like going back in my mind too as you're sharing, and I'm sure you are a little bit too. Like we can't help it. We know
Yeah.
where we came from. We know the things. Get where you are living like this completely transformed life, and I totally agree with you. Like that is a very odd thing from where I sit too. Congratulations on your 29 years. That's
Thank you.
incredible. And I agree with you. Like I never share anything about my sobriety or anything about my life really as like a toot my horn kind of
Yeah.
thing. And in fact, it's almost the opposite when people
I know.
respond to me. I don't know if you ever like I share sometimes like in Facebook groups or wherever it might be appropriate or whatever I share if people ask and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. You're amazing." And I'm like, I'm just like a girl who decided to get sober and
Hmm.
changed everything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my answer all the time because that is truly what I believe. Because the humility, I think, that comes with living a life as a sober person,
Mhm.
is so profound the more sober you get. It
Yes.
is so true what they say in
Yes.
the rooms. I got sober in AA. It was all we had back then. And I've done a lot of different things with modern recovery since then, and that's incredible options, and we
Mhm.
love that. And I'm so glad we have it all. But the bottom line still is we don't take a drink or a drug today, and we're not people who can normally do that.
Right.
Nobody should, but we just really can't. And so, you're so right. And I couldn't agree with you more about the spiritual component to like whatever that looks like for you. Spirituality is a part of our lives. I don't care who
Mhm.
you are or how much you think it isn't. It is. And it's not the same thing as religion. It can be, it can be for you. And it can also just be very much a deeper connection with something outside yourself. And
Mhm.
I work that into my clinical practice. That's a part of my psychosocial assessment. I ask
Yeah.
everybody about where they are. We talk about why that's important. Um, because not because I think you should go to church or do it if you want. That's cool. I do. But don't if you don't. That's cool too. But because we all know that, and you and I have been around long enough in life and in
Mhm.
sobriety to know
Mhm.
that you just don't get very far or have any kind of internal peace of any kind if you can't create some kind of connection outside yourself. So I feel like we're very similarly aligned with all of that. And
Mhm.
I'm really grateful that you're here to share even more about that work that you did, and then it
Mhm.
is continuous, right? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, like you said, you've lived a long time. I chuckled to myself a little bit. I was the person that I just never expected I'd live to be 30.
No.
I just assumed I would be dead. I
Mhm.
tried to do that. I was a
Mhm.
depressive drunk. I tried to do it myself. I just assumed that I wouldn't make it to my 30th birthday. And then, I just turned 50 last year and I have three kids. They're adult. I mean, it is crazy,
Mhm.
how much of a transformation you can go through in a lifetime. I've been
Mhm.
married to the same person since I was 16, like well, we weren't married. So like it's wild. It is
Mhm.
wild. And it does show that it works when you work it. I have the pleasure of working with a lot of people in recovery too in my room. And sometimes it's some of the most painful stuff I do, you know. The further removed I get from it, I never want to forget, but I have a new client right now who just came to me recently and they're brand new,
Yeah.
tried it a little bit last year, it didn't stick. Um, and gosh, last week I just felt so, when I met her, I just felt like a visceral response, like I could
Mhm.
feel my
Mhm.
own nervous system really just resonating with
Mhm. Mhm.
her pain, and I just thought, girl, it can get so much better. Like this is all you have to do. And I know it sounds like so cliche, right? Like, oh, this is all you have to do. All you have to do is change everything. But it does get better. So I'm just curious to if you are willing to share kind of like in your journey. Obviously, 29 years is a long time. That's a long time to get removed. However, parenting is another area where I almost felt like, so I've had a lot of, probably like you, ups and downs in my own recovery, right? When I was
Mhm.
4 years sober, I had what I call my first sober bottom. I was kind of like, I got sober and 6 months later I was pregnant. I had three kids in 4 years. So
Oh
I
my
don't recommend
God.
that. Yeah, I don't recommend doing it that way. It's a little backwards. So then by then I was like, oh crap, like there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But I was now parenting all these little people, and that was a really big priority. But I had to go back and kind of regroup. But at the end, that I was like at the end, again, I
Mhm.
was like feeling really yucky. And then that's happened a few other times throughout the course of those couple decades, right? I've
Mhm.
had those
Mhm.
moments of like, wow, like we are just at the bottom, or times when I've felt like I was hurting myself, because we can find other ways to do that.
Yeah.
Um, that was addiction, very much addiction like, but not substances. For me, it's usually food. Um, then that looks really ugly and dysfunctional. So, raising teenagers was one of those times for us. We had COVID and teenagers, and it was really, really hard.
Oh,
And for 4 years, we were in sustained trauma here. It really was.
God.
And I felt like I was drowning. I didn't even know it until I got out, and I was like, wow, I can breathe. So there's all these periods of life that go through where we have sustained stress or anxiety that create nervous system dysregulation and almost take us back into what is our natural way, which is to want to numb out with drugs and alcohol.
Mhm. There's a couple things that you said, Shelby, about the sustained peace, right? Like that's something that I didn't know that I wanted.
Mm.
So I'm just going to hold that for a minute and then go back in time because you talked about the bottoms. And there are, I think, very specific times in recovery that we hit these dark places, and nobody warns us about these dark places. They just arrive. And my first upheaval was around 9/11. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what to do. I was 4 years sober, and I was like, the world is ending. And the next thing I know, I was in Bangkok, living in a little studio apartment, writing a book, and really on a quest. Again, it's this spiritual thing, this hunger that I've had. And so that kind of bottom opened the door to a pathway of what I walk now, right? I found Buddhism, and I started going down that path of mindfulness and meditation, and understanding that when I was living there, I worked with women that were just coming off the street, and the political climate there was really wild. And I got to submerge myself into a culture and accept it, which I didn't know that that's what I was going for. But doing that pushed me through this really dark time in my sobriety because I had other things to focus on. I wasn't focused on myself and my like, oh my God, the world is ending, you know? Uh, and I came back after that trip. I was out for about out in Southeast Asia for about a year, and I came back, and I had such this counterculture. I just like culture shock, and I found myself in the middle of Colorado, and looking at the mountains and thinking, what am I doing with my life? And I bought a bicycle, and I started working at a diner, and serving coffee. It was like, what am I doing with my life? But this was such a time where it was this personal evolution. And that's what we do in sobriety. It's like we have to continue to find ourselves. And I think it's really fun. At the time, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrific. I'm like barely able to pay the rent, and I'm serving eggs to people. What? This is why I'm sober? Really? Yeah, like, what? But what happened there is I met a great group of people. And that group of people showed me how to become a friend. They showed me how to date. They showed me how to become somebody in a community, which I didn't really know how to do. And that got me to the next phase of my, life, which landed me back in San Francisco and getting married, which I was like, what am I doing? I'm not supposed to be married. Wait a minute. I thought I was gay. Now I'm marrying a man. Wait a minute. What happened? Like, again, my spiritual experience was just kind of unraveling. And it's these times in sobriety that I'm like, is this what I signed up for? But from a soul perspective, yes, 100%, 100,000%. COVID, you mentioned COVID and how that was just, that was a hard time for everybody on the planet, granted. And, during that time, you talk about the other addictions that start to come up. I was abstinent for 15 years, and I lost my abstinence. I started eating bags of potato chips and croissants. And, it was like, bets off. I don't care. Like, as long as I'm not drinking, I'm fine. But that, it's a mental illness, and it's this really dark, like, wiring that occurs. And I put on like 30 pounds. It was not a good time. But, on the, as I was unraveling through that, I got closer to my husband, which was weird. People were getting divorced right and left, and my husband and I were taking walks every day with the dogs. I was like, okay, we're winning here. So, at the end of that time, I kind of looked at myself in the mirror. I remember this like it was yesterday. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, who are you? I was like 20, what was that? 24 years sober. And I was like, wait, this is not what I signed up for. And I remember, praying, and I hadn't prayed in a long time, because I think what happens is that we get going in our lives, and then we just start living our life, or that's how my experience. I just started living my life. Yeah. And I just prayed. I said, I need some help right now. And The next day, I was introduced to somebody who opened the door for the next part of my transformation. And, I started exercising again. I got back into being an athlete. Um, I really kind of took my spiritual game and my like just my physical body into a different place, uh, because it wasn't working. The croissants every day were not working. And I'll reach for coffee. We have a neighborhood coffee place here in San Francisco called Phil's Coffee, and they're right around the corner from my house. And they have an app, and you can order the coffee and you can have it ready for you. And I was ordering like 3 of those a day.
Oh my gosh.
And then I realized, I was like, okay, this is alcoholic. Like this, I'm drinking too much. I mean, I'm like shaking. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to not do that anymore. And I self-willed it. That went away. And then I discovered matcha,
Mm.
and I was having 6 matchas a day. And and then I started buying gift cards to buy the matcha. And like then I was using a different account so my husband wouldn't understand. So it's just like, this is the illness, the mental illness that I suffer from if I'm not plugged into a resource that is much greater than myself. I just cannot manage my thinking
Mhm.
around what seems really easy. Like, just walk the dog. You don't have to get a matcha every day. You don't have to get 3 matchas or 6. So I like these things that we're talking about, because this is long-term recovery. This is what we have to like look at.
Mhm.
And recently, last year, I was put into the hospital because I was exercising too much.
Mhm.
Like my body broke down, my nervous system just collapsed.
Mhm.
And it's really looking at the mental illness will go wherever it can to get your attention. And
Yeah.
so now I'm like, okay, I'm awake.
We're pumping the brakes here.
Yeah.
We're cooling the jets. We're like, we're only gonna go to the gym 2 times a
Yeah.
day now.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's
Uh,
fine. I think what you said, I mean, we're making light of it, and brevity and humor are a huge part of
mhm.
my coping skills. So, but it's a serious matter, and I
Yeah,
don't want
it
anybody to
is.
think we don't take it seriously. But I have to use humor, or else I will just
Start
be
crying.
very angry. Yeah, I'll either cry or just, I don't know, crawl in a hole or something. Um, but my goodness, be careful what community you do that in,
Yeah.
because yesterday I got in trouble for making it. Therapist communities, I don't know if you know, are not always the friendliest. Which
Uh-huh.
is very odd since we're
Uh-huh.
supposed to be the most tolerant. Anyway, and I'm always one to like kind of challenge, thinking patterns and perspectives, just bring difference to it. Like
Hmm.
diversity of thought, I think is supposed to be really important, right? And diversity of thought includes all thoughts, not just yours.
Right.
And so a lot of my colleagues don't like that. And so, I had a nice, lovely chat with some people yesterday, and this woman was very aggressive. And gosh, I think what you're saying, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because makes me chuckle, because I feel like I notice I feel, and now this could change at any minute. I mean, I realize in my life, and honestly, I say it all the time, any of this can change in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Things
Yep.
are so amazing right now. My kids are good. My kid is I mean, I feel like everything is going great, but literally in 5 seconds, that could all change. I'm very aware of that.
Yep.
And so I don't walk around pretending that like that's not true. But
Hmm.
right now, here I am. So,
Hmm.
I generally do feel pretty content, very peaceful. I have a
Hmm.
lot of joy. I just do. I'm very unbothered in my 50s. This is a
Hmm.
beautiful thing. I'm just
Hmm.
loving this. And I think it's contributed to better relationships. It's definitely from, really good EMDR work, great nervous system regulation, just a lot of spiritual work. My spiritual program has elevated in the last like 3 to 5 years to levels that I just didn't know were possible. And so
Hmm.
now I feel just deeply unbothered by most things, and it's just a great way to be. And so we were having this chat, and this woman was just so aggressive, and I'm just like, dang, there's a way you can make your point, and like you don't have to come at me, like you don't have
Hmm.
to,
Yeah.
like you don't have to like escalate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, so like, and I'm trying to like, and I felt like I was jumping like after, reading these posts and stuff. And I'm like, dang. And so I was actually like agreeing with her. I was like, hey, you're totally right. This is whatever. And then she said something about me. And I was like, well, I guess I just never thought about it that way. And then, because we were having this dispute about over a word and the meaning of it and all this stuff. And so then that was good. We ended, I was like, oh, okay. And then I followed up with something funny
Mhm.
because I was in Aldi and there was a man in front of me, an elderly man, and then he dropped his sour cream on the floor. I kicked it. I was like, oh, is this yours? He was already checked out. I handed it to the lady and was like, hey, put it in my stuff. I don't, it's $1.29. And the guy was like, oh no, you can't. I'm like, dude, it's fine. Just take your sour cream. And to me, I was like, I said, oh, I just had to fight a guy in the Aldi so I could pay for your sour cream. I wonder if that's activism because that was the word. And I put a la I said, I don't know, something like that. And I put a laughing emoji and she freaking she was like, this is a serious matter. I can't believe you just laughed at me. And I was like, oh, honey, I was laughing at myself. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, my
Yeah.
God, if you're that balled up, if you're
Yeah.
that tense and angry at just so many things, your nervous system is so dysregulated that you can't even possibly see that somebody was being funny. And I explained, she's like, oh, well, thanks for the clarification. I'm like, that it's just not something that should need to be explained. But okay. So I just think people are walking around like that.
Well, do
They're
you think that
just
people are just so self-centered?
so self-centered.
So self-centered.
So self-centered, and they say we're self-centered. We
Yeah.
are. Self-centeredness and
Yes.
selfishness is the root of our problems, and I believe that for sure.
Yeah.
And that can
Yeah.
rear its head. I
Yeah.
don't care how sober you are, you have to always be in check of that. But having a stance of humility
Yeah.
does kind of combat that. That is the
Yeah.
medicine, I think, for understanding, like, I'm not better than
Mhm.
you or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, you believe this, cool, cool. I believe this, great, we can chat. Like, I think humility helps with that. And also just being unbothered. Like
Yes.
if you want to run parent is your child a girl or a boy? I forgot, a daughter.
Boy.
Boy, if you want to parent your son, who's almost the
Mhm.
same age as mine,
Mhm.
and you want to let him hang out with girls in the basement and like you don't go down and check on them and keep your lights on or whatever, there's no rules, which, in my house we have some rules. And that's fine. You get to do that.
Mhm.
You get to, and I'm like, oh, cool. If it was my daughter in your basement, I might say, hey, what are you guys up to over there? How do you provide supervision?
Yeah,
Um,
that's not happening.
but I don't get to control what you do in your house. I've been in that. I have two
Yeah.
daughters and a son, and I've been on that situation when the
Uh-huh.
mother has said, "Oh, we don't really check on them." We had that last year. Oh, we don't. We just let them. They know our rules. And I said, well, he's like a 17-year-old boy, right? Have you looked at him? He's 6'3", he's 200 pounds. I mean, like have you seen him?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. I'm just guessing. He's still a boy.
I think
Anyway,
some people are just checked out.
but they just, and I'm not saying, my point only is
Yeah.
you get to do that.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
fine. And I get to do this. And as long
Yep.
as it's not hurting my people
Hmm.
or my home or something, like it really isn't that big of a deal. But everybody makes everything a big deal. And then we pile on other things. Some
Yeah.
things are out of our control, right? Air, water, clean air, clean water, food, processed food, things like that, we're consuming a lot of things that are hurting us.
Hmm.
So then that layers on nervous system dysregulation, right? Which
Hmm.
you didn't even know was happening,
Right.
and then you add on stress and anything else. Not to mention the stored trauma, and
Hmm.
that's where we really get hit hard. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, like with with your son, kind of raising kids, a lot of that stuff will rear its ugly head at certain ages, or stages. It'll show
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
whenever you were, kind of had a hard time or something big went on in your life. I know it happened to me, so
Yeah.
it's
I'm just thinking about how different people parent and how I try to stay really neutral. Like, okay, yeah, let him drive the car. Go for it. Just let him. Yeah, let him get a ticket. Like I have a friend who's just, her son's gonna do what he wants to do. And when he was 14, he would ride motorbikes, down across the city without a helmet. I'm like, what? How is that possible? But it's not my business. And I still love her and support her and I love her kid.
that's
And
right.
it's just like, if I want to be in the world and navigate relationships, I need to be mindful of my own judgments because
Mhm.
I have them and they can come out. And I think that's the gift of sobriety is being able to remain neutral when things don't feel good. Like
Yeah. I
when,
totally agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, when I have a really strong opinion, I can say my opinion and I can be heard, and then I can just stay there. I don't have to make my point. I don't have to prove anything because my point is my point. And I think that is, again, that is a gift of long-term recovery. I didn't have that before. I didn't have that when I was 5 or 10 years sober. That is something into my 20s and now into the into the
Yeah.
3 day. Like I can't even believe I'm gonna be 30 years sober. That's just like crazy time.
That must be
So
what's happening to me too, because I definitely feel I can totally relate to that with the 5 and 10.
yeah.
Frankly, I was parenting all those kids and I was still not very unwell, even though I was doing a lot of really good work. I was heavily involved, in the
Mhm.
program and recovery work and therapy, and I was definitely doing the things. So I was way better. But
Mhm.
still, like I celebrated my 10-year anniversary and I stood at the podium and was like, I'm pissed off that I'm still having to do this. Like, why do I still have to do this? And
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
still this way. Like,
Mhm.
I was angry. I said that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was 10 years in.
Yeah.
I think back
Yeah.
on that all the time and think like, damn, that's kind of
I
sad.
think
Like,
that is something that comes up. I think anger is one of these things that we just push down, push down, push down. And then around 10 to 15, it explodes on us.
well,
It
that's what
did for me, at
happened.
least.
That was my story. No one ever
Yeah.
told me that, but I'm glad. Thank you for validating that. And now I feel that it's settled down.
Mhm.
I continue to be completely unbothered. But what you just said is so important, and I think just so would do everybody so much good if they could get some of that. I
Mhm.
actually had a client session a little bit ago with a woman who we were working on exactly that, and she is very upset about the way her daughter-in-law views her and is
Mhm.
like thinks she's like a people pleaser and all these things and different things and we've talked a lot about it, and I said to her, she's allowed to think whatever she wants about you,
Yeah.
and it's really none of your business. And so that's a hard thing to say out loud sometimes to people. Sometimes I feel like that's really when I say, because it's very often.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what other people think about you is none of your business. I learned that in AA.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for that because it's so true. We're all judging all the time, no matter
Mhm.
if we want to or not. We're just, whether they're positive or negative, we're doing it. And it's not a bad thing necessarily.
Yeah.
Where it becomes a problem, I think, is exactly what you said. What my problem with people is I don't think it's anyone's job, mine or anyone else's, to convince someone of something. Like it's not my job to convince you that you need to believe this or that you should parent your kid this way. That's not my job. Like, and so people think that is their job.
Yeah.
And I've been on the receiving end of that in friendships, and it's very, very strange. I watched it unfold during COVID with one of mine, and I was like, this is really happening. Like, oh, okay. I was shocked, kind of like, why
Mhm.
do you think why do you think you can get, like, she was like really digging in
Mhm.
some stuff,
Mhm.
like she was trying. She was bribing me. She was like dividending me thin. And I was like, girl, I'm not gonna do it.
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
doing it. Like I already made my decision. I feel this way. I'm not doing it. And I don't care if you do.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
care. You clearly do. And so I'm just not, but it's not our job to convince people of other things.
No,
I don't know why people think that it is.
it's so
Is that the
not. It's like,
self-centeredness? Is that the
I
self-centeredness, you
think it is
think?
the
Okay.
self-centeredness. I think
Okay.
that it is one of the things that I teach in my class is this is a it's this mindfulness. It's a
Yeah.
state of neutral, being neutral. Like how can you show up in your relationship? How can you show up in your marriage? How can you show up with your son or your daughter? I had a client, she's an attorney right now, and she's sitting in my class, and she has a colleague, and she's always, and
Mhm.
I challenged her. I challenged the whole class to engage with neutrality throughout every moment, and she's like, but how do I do that?
Mhm.
And I said, look at the person in their eyes and count backwards from 10. Forget what they're talking about. Just that's your starting point.
Yeah.
Just count backwards from 10, because there's
Right.
always that engagement. There's always that, like, they're, creating the story in your head, right? You're already trying to answer them before they're telling what they need. And it's like, just be present with somebody.
Mhm.
And when you're present with somebody, right, you can hear them. You can start to feel them in a different way, you know?
Mhm.
And so she came back and she's like, okay, I didn't think it was going to work. And I'm like, yeah, what happened? She goes, I had no opinion. I was like, that was a
Oh,
win. Like that was such a win, you know? And that it's like in sobriety, in everyday life, in relationships, we have to have these small wins, you know? And if we're walking around with this chip on our shoulder, or I'm going to prove something to someone, or it's all about me, we're never going to win. We're just never going to win. So,
I love that strategy. I think that's really helpful. It's sort of like, remember in the old days, we're probably similar age, when they would talk about that, like before you spank your kid or you shake them or you count, you know. I don't know about you, but I had that moment in the bathroom with one of mine. I think it was my son, when it was something, maybe it was probably my oldest daughter because she was very challenging. And I remember sitting there looking at her and I'm like, this is the moment.
this is the moment.
This is when people hurt their kids, right here. I'm looking at it. Right this minute is when people take them and shake them or
Yeah.
slam them against the wall. Like I felt it, I didn't
Yeah.
do that
Yeah.
obviously, but like
Yeah.
I could feel like I would want to,
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have the resources. And so those things are helpful to be like, oh gosh, that's a real thing. And it gives you a little bit of insight into maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're not experiencing what someone else is experiencing. You're not in their life, but you can have a little tiny window
Mm-hmm.
into what it's like to live like that, right? It's like kind of
Mm-hmm.
why like AA or 12 Step Works or whatever community you're in that comes together regularly and shares stories, because then you're in a space where you're hearing regular, real life stories, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can feel like that. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it starts to destigmatize those feelings that we want to make bad. And I think that self-centeredness does grab a hold of people and they're nervous at the nervous system level. It's living
Yes,
in there.
it is.
Personally, I believe it's from past trauma. That's my
Mm-hmm.
bent. That's what I believe everything comes from. We're not born like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it comes from stuff happening, and trauma is very relative. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always the capital T stuff. It's always the live life stuff,
It is.
and
Yeah.
it gets stored in there. And then sometimes people just grab onto that and they think like, if I wonder if they think, if I don't speak up in this, if I don't share my opinion or fight back or defend
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
then that means what? It means
I'm
something
weak.
about
I'm
me. I'm
worthless.
weak.
Yeah.
I'm not valuable.
Yep.
I'm not heard. People won't like me. I mean,
Yep.
and so then it's that those are deep core beliefs. They get way down, way. And so that's why we do this kind of work. But when you don't do that kind of work and you're left like, I can always tell, and it's not my job to like let anybody know necessarily unless they come here and ask for help. But like you can kind of see, like when you're engaging with people in the world, like the woman I just referenced yesterday, I'm like, damn, you need some EMDR. Like you
Yeah.
are got a lot of stored trauma in there. I don't know what it's from, and it's not your fault, but
Mm-hmm.
it is in there. And now it's time for you to do some work because also life just doesn't have to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful at this point. Like I feel so, it's not like you, kind of like just cool,
Yeah.
magical. Like I
Just
feel like so relatively happy and joyful. So I think that nervous system storage
mhm.
is where we're learning so much more about. The brain research that we're having over the last 10 years is giving us so much information, but we have to do something about it. And when those things come up, I don't know, I was taught early on too. Maybe see what you think about this. Like when things come up, and I strongly believe that when we are disturbed, there's something wrong with us. I
Mhm.
firmly believe that. I still believe it.
Mhm.
I think other people have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
It's true. It's an indicator. It doesn't mean something's your fault or you should do something else. It just is an indicator that there's something going on with you that's
Mhm.
unresolved. So when that happens and you're standing in front of your husband and you want to, or your kid, and you want to lash out or when you can stop and give yourself like 5 seconds or let your breath, Jefferson, what is that wonderful guy who I love following now on Instagram? Jefferson Fisher. It's fabulous. I thought he was a therapist. I was watching all of his reels. I loved him. He's a litigation attorney,
Ah,
specializes in communication. It's fabulous.
that's
He says,
awesome.
let your breath be your first word.
Yeah.
I was like, so if you let your breath be your first word and you ask yourself, what is going on right now? Why? What's happening?
Mhm.
What about this situation is bothering me? If you do that honestly, you're going to get some information back that you might not really want to deal with, but it's going to be true. It usually has to do with fear of not getting something we want or losing something we have. And then you dig down on that. Well, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to lose my financial security. What would that mean about me? I'm a bad mom or I'm not good enough, whatever it is. But if you start asking yourself good questions like that in those moments of disturbance, you're going to get information.
I know, but that's what people are afraid to do that.
Yeah, they won't do it.
They won't do it. And
I
and
say it all the time.
that's where the growth has to occur. That's your edge. And
Yeah.
it's you I don't think this is the work that you do alone. I think this is where you go into a group
Yes.
program or you get a therapist or you like,
Hmm.
you know, it, nervous system, you know, from that angle, looking at the nervous system, it's like we come out and we're these perfect little beings, these little babies, and we crawl and we use our little voice and we use our little arms and right, this is all normal. And then, suddenly we are placed into a diaper and then we are told that we can't, go to the bathroom on the floor or we miss the potty and then we're scolded and then all of a sudden this is our first contraction is when we're said, no, you're not supposed to go to the bathroom there, or no, you can't have that, or you're supposed to go to sleep now, right? Our body is then in a contracted state, which is the first nervous system point of dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it actually happens before in utero, but I don't need to go into that so much. This idea around carrying that up until your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, and you're in your 30s and you're not going to the bathroom at work. You're sitting at your desk. You're telling your nervous system, I can't go to the bathroom right now, which completely shuts you down, right? So that's just one example I want to share with listeners of how we shut ourselves down. And so, or we won't drink water, right? We're just like, no water all day. We're completely dehydrated. So these two examples I see all the time with my students and how their nervous system is shot. And now we live in this time. I mean, Shelby, we live in a crazy world right now, right? Like we just do. And so it's like, I ask my students, I say, how many on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 is like, I am super stressed out. 1 is like, I'm chill. Where do you sit? And they're like, 3. And I'm like, no, you're actually at an 8. Like we are living in a world where people have 2 screens, 3 screens, 2 cell phones. Right? We're constantly being bombarded, and all of that completely unregulates our nervous system. And so for people in recovery, it's like we're super sensitive. So we're not at an 8, we're at a 10.
Right.
So what do we do at a 10 every day? Like how are people, regulating their nervous system? And if they don't know anything about nervous regulation, I mean, they have you for sure to check out and listen to, but go down that like rabbit hole of like how to support your nervous system, because we are, again, with the AI, like we just keep increasing this technology use, which is shutting our nervous system down and putting us into a state that is dangerous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And
Sorry,
frankly,
Shelby.
oh no, this is the you show. And also like I love those examples because those are things that are definitely obviously for you and you're just one person in the whole world of people providing services are seeing that a lot in your practice. So that tells me that there's a lot of people who are experiencing that very thing. And it seems like it kind of almost you can almost make the case if that's like normal. I can see how somebody would be like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just normal. Like have you seen those bathrooms at our school? They're gross. Like we're not, they can definitely talk themselves into that and then be supported probably by a world that's
Yes.
like, yeah, I totally understand that.
Yes.
But yet here you are saying this is like a literal function of the early stages of
Mhm.
trauma development. And
Yep.
again, trauma is not, we're not always talking about like some severe
Oh,
abuse
no.
or neglect or any of that. It's just normal stuff. It's just
Exactly.
how your brain internalized it. It's
Yep.
how your brain heard those words that
Yep.
actually could have been in with good intentions from a parent with like,
Exactly.
but you heard it and you were like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, okay. And
Hmm.
now I'm going to run with that. And I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And now you have a raging addiction and,
Hmm.
all the
Hmm.
other things. So it's like such a simple thing. It's not the science is some of it is though. And there's simple practices, just like you mentioned, the counting down,
Yeah.
um, letting our first word be the breath, all the way up to complex practices, like with in-office neurofeedback and,
Yeah.
all kinds of other stuff, like, and then a ton of stuff in between,
Mhm.
So I think that people hear these things or they hear or see something online and it sounds woo woo, or it sounds like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that or whatever. But it can be downgraded to like the very simplistic. Like, how do we just de-escalate our mind and body just for a moment, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
I always tell people to get outside.
yeah,
Like just put your phone down and go outside. Look at a
yes.
tree, look at something green immediately,
Mhm.
and then look up at the sky, the contrast, and then come back and orient, right? Because having our eyes go up and down and orient like that can just
Yes.
shift the neurochemistry of your brain. And people
Right.
are like, that's it? Really? I'm like, try it. And then they'll come back and like, that worked. I'm like, yes, it did.
That's why I told you to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we need to complicate it. I think we do
No.
need to keep things. I'm in the brand of definitely keeping things simple. And then
Mhm.
as we grow and learn, we sometimes we do want to complicate things. We want to add in layers of
Yeah.
depth, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to, start doing Reiki or take yoga or
Mhm.
something else, fine. But we can start very simple with just with our breath. It's always with us. We
Always
have
the breath.
access to that at all times. We can utilize being outside. I don't care.
Mhm.
It's like it's been in the teens and single digits here all week last week. We're in a warm front. It's like 35 today. But put your coat on, and go outside.
Yeah.
Put your coat on. Watch your dog run around in the woods, look at the trees. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just pay attention. Feed yourself
Mhm.
properly,
Yeah.
drink water. Just feed yourself properly.
Read a
And then
book, like an
when you
old
start
school
getting,
book.
yeah, I know, right? Pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get away from the screens and stuff too in technology. I mean, there's too much good about it too. But so that means we have to take forced breaks. We have to
Yes.
intentionally, the
Yes.
adult in us, we have to be
Mhm.
adults and say, oh, actually, I don't pick up my phone after this time,
Yeah.
or I take 30-minute breaks, or whatever you do. But people, I think, seem to think that like all of that, and I guess it's just human nature. We want it easy, we want it to be done
Mhm.
for us. But
The brain
we,
is lazy.
as an adult,
Like,
you have to do this stuff for yourself.
yeah.
Now, people can help us, but in the end, you got yourself in the hospital because you overexercised, like nobody told you had to do that. You did that all on your own, right? So you can
Mhm.
now not do that, you can now
Right.
say, you know what, I'm gonna exercise properly, you
Well,
know?
now I haven't been able to work in 10 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a real shutdown. It's been a real like rearrangement of my life.
I always say that our brains are so powerful, they will find a way
Yes,
to shut us down, right? It'll make
they
you sick.
will.
It'll make you sick.
Yep.
It'll get you hurt.
Yep.
Something will happen if your brain is saying we need, or you get an autoimmune disease or
Mhm.
something. That's not by
Oh,
accident.
no.
It's like, oh, you need to rest,
Yep.
and so this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's how powerful our brains are.
I know.
It's not by accident. So like I said to my son a maybe a year or so ago, he's real quiet, super quiet, doesn't talk at all, hardly. And it's really tough, because you're like, because A, I want him to talk to me. And B,
Mhm.
I do worry about him a lot, because I just never really, he's an inside processor with
Mhm.
anxiety. And I said to him one time, because there was definitely something going on. I think it was probably after some game, lacrosse or something. And I said, you can talk to me or not. That's fine. But your body will find a way
Yep.
to get that out, and
Yep.
you might not like it. So
Yep.
I'd suggest maybe just like maybe just get it out the way you want it to come out, or else could end up someplace you're not really happy about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, what kind of when you want people to reach out to you to learn more, where do you like them to go? How do you like them
Yeah.
to find out about you?
Everything is on my website at lanekennedy.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'll make sure I link that in the show notes below and connect people to you and your
Yeah.
work, because your stress management work is extremely powerful. And this is a conversation I think we should be having way more regularly in the world.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
getting it
Yep.
normalized that we take breaks, that
Mhm.
normalized that we go outside.
It's normal to come to a class about
Yes.
stress management.
Yes.
It's normal. I have students that come for years now because it's a commitment to their sanity,
Mhm.
which I applaud them. You know, it's just like, yes, you're taking care. It's an act of self-care.
Yeah.
You know, it's like admitting like, wow, I have stress in my life.
Yeah.
And how do I manage this? Well, this is how you do it.
Hmm.
It's cool.
Well, thank you so much for your time and this conversation. It's been amazing. I definitely can see us needing to have a follow-up because there's
Yes.
so much more to say. So thank you again. I'll make sure I link everybody in the show notes and I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Shelby.